Welcome to another African folktale. Today's story is about a powerful kingdom that seemed perfect on the outside, but was hiding a dangerous secret. For generations, the people followed a forbidden rule without asking questions. They believed it protected their land and brought them peace. But when one brave young boy dared to ask why the rule existed, he uncovered a truth that would change everything and lead a great kingdom toward destruction. Before we begin, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our African folktales and inspiring stories. Now sit back, relax, and listen to the forbidden rule that destroyed a great kingdom. Long, long ago, in the green heart of Africa, there was a kingdom called Usuala. It sat beside a great river that sang as it moved. The trees were tall and strong. The farms gave food every season. The people laughed often and worried little. Usuala was not just beautiful. It was blessed. And every person who lived there knew it. Image prompt. The kingdom was ruled by King Adaeze Obi, a powerful man with a voice like thunder and hands like tree roots. The people loved him because he was fair. He settled arguments with wisdom. He shared food when the rains were slow. He built roads so traders could travel safely. Under his rule, Usuala grew rich and respected. Other kingdoms sent their children to learn in Usuala's schools. Traders came from far away just to walk its markets. But there was one rule in Usuala, one rule above all others. It had been made by the first king, a great man named Ezenwanye, 500 years before. The rule was simple and it was serious. No one, not even the king, may take water from the sacred river at night. The river was the heart of the kingdom. It fed the farms. It gave the people water to drink. And the river spirit, a beautiful and powerful being called Miri, protected it. She gave her blessings freely, but she asked for one thing in return, respect for her waters in the dark hours. Every child in Usuala grew up knowing this rule. Mothers whispered it to babies. Fathers taught it to sons before they taught them to farm. The elders repeated it at every gathering. It was not just a law, it was a promise between the people of Usuala and the spirit, who kept their river clean and full. For 500 years the rule had been kept, and for 500 years the river had never run dry. Now, in the 32nd year of King Adaeze Obi's reign, something changed inside the king. He had grown used to getting what he wanted. He had ruled so long and so well that he began to believe that the rules were for others, not for him. He had built roads. He had won wars. He had fed the hungry. Surely, he told himself, the spirit would understand if the king needed something at night. Surely the rules bent a little for a man who had done so much good. It began with a small thing. One dry season, the king's finest horse fell sick. The royal doctor said the horse needed water from the sacred river mixed with healing herbs. But the only time they could gather the correct herbs was at midnight, when the moon was highest. The king did not hesitate. He called for a servant and said, "Go to the river tonight. Take the water. Tell no one." The servant trembled, but the king was the king. What could the servant do? He went. The servant crept to the river in the dark. His heart beat fast. The night was very quiet. No crickets, no frogs, no wind. Just the soft movement of the water. He dipped the calabash into the river quickly, filled it, and ran back to the palace without looking behind him. The horse was healed by morning. The king smiled. Nothing had happened. No thunder. No floods, no curse. He thought, see, it was just an old story. The rule means nothing. But Elder Chibueze heard what had happened. The old man with cloudy eyes and a carved owl staff came to the palace at sunrise. He moved slowly, but his voice was strong. "My king," he said, "I must speak plainly. What was done last night was wrong. The rule is not old and empty. The rule is alive. Mamiri is patient, but she is not blind." The king looked at the elder calmly. "The horse lives," the king said. "The river still flows. Nothing is wrong, old man. Go and rest." Queen Nena also came to her husband that morning. She sat beside him gently, her indigo wrap bright against the morning light, her small carved wooden staff in her hands. "Adaeze," she said softly, calling him by name as she always did in private. "Listen to Chibueze. He is old, but he is not wrong. What you did was small today, but small cracks grow into broken walls." The king took her hand. He smiled at her. You worry too much, he said. I did what I had to do. I am the king. The spirit knows my heart. After that first night, the king broke the rule again and again. Each time, he found a reason that seemed good. Once his own mother was sick and needed river water. Once, a great drought was coming and he wanted to fill the palace wells before others knew. Once, he simply wanted fresh water for his bath, and he told himself he was too important to wait for morning. Each time, he sent servants to the river at night. Each time, nothing seemed to happen, and each time he felt a little bolder, a little less afraid, a little more sure that the old rule was just a story old people told. But the river noticed. Every living thing in Uzoala was connected to the river, and every soul connected to the river was connected to Mamiri. She did not shout. She did not storm. She simply began to pull away. Like a mother whose child keeps ignoring her, she grew quieter. The river's current slowed. The fish moved deeper and were harder to catch. The water began to taste faintly of something. Not bad. Not poison, just different. Just wrong. Like something precious beginning to leave. The farmers noticed first. Old Babatunde, who had farmed the same field beside the river for 40 years, came to the market one morning shaking his head. The yams are smaller, he said. The soil near the river feels tired. Something is wrong with the water. Others agreed. The women who washed clothes at the river said, the water left their hands dry and rough now. Children who used to swim laughed less. The river was changing. It was still there. But it was not the same river anymore. Elder Chibues came to the king again. This time, he did not come alone. He brought 7 other elders with him. Old men and women with gray hair and serious eyes, all dressed in white. They stood before the king in the great hall, and they spoke together. The rule has been broken many times now, my king. Miri is pulling away from us. If this continues, the river will die. And when the river dies, Uzoala dies with it. The king sat forward on his throne. His eyes were hard. Who told you the rule was broken? He asked. And who dares to tell a king what will happen in his own kingdom? The elders lowered their eyes in respect. But Elder Chibuezi did not lower his. My king, the old man said, his voice low and steady, I am not your enemy. I am your memory. I remember what the first king taught. Power is not the right to break the rules. Power is the strength to keep them when it is hardest. The rule was not made to limit you. It was made to protect you. To protect all of us. There was a long silence in the hall. The torches flickered. Then the king stood up. Leave my hall, he said. All of you. That night, the king did something he had never done before. He did not send a servant to the river. He went himself. He wanted to prove, to himself, to the elders, to everyone, that he was not afraid, that the rule was nothing, that he was greater than an old story. He walked alone to the river at midnight, his golden robe dragging on the dark path, the moon hidden behind thick clouds. He knelt at the bank. He put his own hands into the water, and he drank. Then Mamiri appeared. She rose from the water slowly, a tall woman made of water and living light, her hair flowing like a waterfall, her eyes like 2 deep pools on a moonless night. She did not look angry. She looked sad, deeply, deeply sad. Ades Obi, she said, and her voice was like rain falling on dry earth, soft and everywhere at once. I have watched you for a long time. I gave your kingdom 500 years of life. I asked for one thing, one small thing, and you decided it did not apply to you. The king tried to speak, but Miri raised one hand of flowing water and he was silent. I am not here to punish you, she said. Punishment is not my way. I am here to show you what you have already done. She passed her hand over the water's surface, and the king saw, as if looking through glass, the river growing smaller. He saw the farms going dry. He saw children crying because there was no water. He saw the market empty. He saw the people of Uzoala walking away, one family at a time, looking for water somewhere else. He saw his great kingdom, his roads, his schools, his buildings, slowly covered by dust and silence. Can I stop it? The king whispered. His proud voice was gone. He sounded, for the first time, like a man who was afraid, not of punishment, but of loss, of losing what he loved. Can I fix this? Miri looked at him for a long moment. The rule can never be unbroken, she said. What is done is done. But what comes next? that is still in your hands. You can begin again. You can keep the rule from this night forward. You can tell your people the truth. You can choose a days, but you must choose now and you must choose humbly. The king went home before sunrise. He did not sleep. He sat in his throne room alone and thought about every choice he had made, every servant he had sent to the river in the dark, every time Elder Chibwezi had warned him, every time Queen Nena had squeezed his hand and looked at him with worried eyes. He had called himself a good king. But a good king, he now understood, was not a man who did good things and then broke the rules when it suited him. A good king was a man who held the rules above himself, especially when no one was watching. At sunrise, the king did something no king of Uzuala had ever done. He called every person in the kingdom, man, woman, child, farmer, trader, elder, to the great open field near the palace. They came confused and murmuring, wondering why they had been called. Then the king stepped onto the stone platform in the middle of the crowd, and he took off his crown. He held it in both hands, and he told them everything, every broken rule, every night he had sent servants to the river, his reasons, his pride, his arrogance, his failure. The crowd was very quiet. Then an old woman near the back began to weep, not from sadness but from relief, because the truth had finally been spoken. Prince Emeka, standing at the edge of the platform, watched his father with eyes full of complicated feelings. Shame for what had been done, but also something new growing. Respect for this moment of courage. Queen Nena put her hand on her husband's arm. Elder Chibwez nodded slowly, his cloudy eyes bright with something that looked almost like hope. From this day, the king said, his voice rough but steady, the rule stands above the king. Above all kings who come after me, no one, not the sick, not the powerful, not the desperate, not the grieving, may take from the sacred river at night. And any king who breaks this rule will lose his crown before he loses his kingdom. Because a king who cannot keep a promise is not a king at all. He placed the crown back on his head, and the crowd, slowly, then all at once, began to cheer. But the damage was already done. Mary's words had been true. The seasons that followed were hard. The river did not immediately return to its former glory. The fish were fewer. The crops were smaller. Some families who had already left did not come back. The roads the king had built with such pride were quieter now. The schools had fewer children in them. Uzuala was still alive, but it walked with a limp, and the people felt the difference in their bones every day. But here is what also happened. The people became kinder to one another. Because they had less, they shared more. Because the king had been honest about his failure. The people began to be honest about theirs too. Arguments that had lasted for years were settled. Old grudges were laid down. People who had been greedy became more careful. The young ones, especially Prince Emeka, learned the most important lesson of all, that rules made for the good of everyone must be kept by everyone, starting with the person who has the most power. Years passed. Prince Emeka grew into a man. He grew tall like his father, but carried himself differently, carefully, like someone who knew how easily great things could fall. When the day came for him to become king, he stood before the river first, not the palace. He stood at the bank at sunrise, and he made a promise out loud, where the water could hear him. I will be the rule, not above it. I will be the servant of the law, not its master. And if I ever forget that, may the river remind me. Under Emeka's rule, Uzuala slowly healed. It never became exactly what it had been under the great years of his father. Some losses do not fully return, but it became something different, and in some ways better. It became a kingdom that knew its own weakness, a kingdom that remembered, a kingdom that taught its children not just how great they could be, but how quickly greatness could fall. When a person believed the rules were made for others and not for them. And what of Elder Chibwez? He lived long enough to see Emeka crowned king. On the day of the crowning, the ancient man with the cloudy eyes sat in the front row and wept without shame. He wept because he had warned and been ignored and watched the kingdom suffer. But he also wept because the kingdom had not died. Because the truth, even when it comes late, still has power. Because a man can make a terrible mistake and still choose, before the end, to become better. He died 3 seasons later, peacefully, with the sound of the river coming through his window. The story of Uzuala, The great kingdom that cracked because its king forgot that no one stands above the rules that protect everyone was told for generations. Grandmothers told it to grandchildren beside fires. Travelers told it in distant kingdoms as a warning. Teachers told it in schools as a lesson, not to shame the memory of King Adaeze Obi, who in the end had chosen honesty over pride, but to remember what he had forgotten, that the rules which keep a community alive are not the enemy of the powerful. They are the very thing that makes power worth having.